Last few moments, we have had a reaction from the Prime Minister here, Keir Starmer. Let's have a listen to what he's got to say.
Prime Minister, have you spoken to Donald Trump about what's happened in Venezuela?
No, I haven't, and it's obviously a fast-moving situation, and we need to establish all the facts. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he has not yet spoken to Donald Trump and described the situation as fast-moving. He stressed that, at this stage, the priority is to establish all the relevant facts. The Prime Minister made it clear that the United Kingdom was not involved in the operation in any capacity. This statement served to set out the UK's position early, ensuring there was no ambiguity about its role as events continue to unfold. In situations where information is still emerging, governments often seek to clarify what they do and do not know. By emphasising the need to establish the facts, the Prime Minister signalled that the government is still in the assessment phase. His comments reflected a cautious approach, avoiding speculation or premature conclusions while developments remain unclear. The clear statement on non-involvement was particularly significant. When major international actions occur, questions quickly arise about Allied participation or prior knowledge. By addressing this directly, the Prime Minister sought to prevent misunderstandings and to distinguish the UK's position from actions taken by others. The tone of the response was measured, indicating that no final position would be taken until more information becomes available.
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts and take it from there.
The Prime Minister went on to say that he intends to speak with President Trump as well as other allies. This reflects a diplomatic approach that prioritises consultation and coordination with international partners. In circumstances involving significant geopolitical developments, governments commonly seek to align their understanding through direct communication before making formal statements. By referring to the importance of upholding international law, the Prime Minister framed the issue around established principles rather than specific actions. The reference was made without assigning blame or reaching any judgment, underlining a commitment to widely recognised legal norms. This type of language is often used when a government wishes to reaffirm its values while remaining cautious about ongoing events. At the same time, the Prime Minister avoided responding directly to calls for condemnation. Instead, he repeated that facts must first be established and discussions held with key partners. This approach suggests a deliberate effort to maintain diplomatic balance, particularly given the sensitivity of relations with allies. The emphasis remained on process and consultation rather than immediate reaction.
Yeah, there's about 500 there in Venezuela, and we're working with the embassy to make sure that they are well looked after, safeguarded, and get appropriate advice. So we're working at pace with the embassy on that. It is a small number, but it's an important number. It is about 500, and so that's what we're doing there.
Prime Minister's remarks shifts the focus away from diplomatic positioning and places it firmly on consular responsibility. By confirming that there are approximately 500 British nationals currently in Venezuela, the Prime Minister provided a clear and factual reference point for public understanding. In situations involving international instability, such confirmations serve an important role in grounding the discussion, particularly for families and individuals seeking reassurance about the government's awareness of its citizens abroad. The statement that the government is working at pace with the embassy carries specific institutional meaning. Within diplomatic and consular practice, such wording indicates that officials are actively engaged rather than passively observing developments. This typically includes maintaining regular communication with nationals on the ground, assessing security conditions, coordinating with local authorities where appropriate, and ensuring that advice is current and responsive to changing circumstances. The Prime Minister's language suggests that these processes are ongoing and prioritised. By highlighting the embassy's role, the remarks reinforce the importance of established diplomatic infrastructure during periods of uncertainty. Embassies function as the primary interface between a government and its citizens overseas, particularly during crises. Their responsibilities extend beyond information sharing to include assistance with documentation, emergency support, and liaison with local services. Referencing the embassy reassures audiences that these mechanisms are in place and functioning as intended. The Prime Minister also addressed the numerical scale of those affected, describing the figure as relatively small while emphasising its importance. This distinction is significant in public communication. While numbers often shape perceptions of urgency, consular responsibility operates independently of scale. The welfare of citizens is not measured by volume, and the explicit acknowledgement of this principle serves to reinforce the government's obligation to each individual, regardless of how limited the number may appear in comparison to other international contexts. This aspect of the statement is particularly relevant in managing public expectations. During fast-moving international events, attention can quickly shift toward geopolitical implications, alliances, and legal interpretations. By foregrounding citizen welfare, the Prime Minister anchored the response in a domain that is both tangible and immediate. It reframes the discussion around duty of care rather than policy debate, which is often a deliberate choice when full information is still emerging. Notably, this section of the remarks avoids any evaluative language about the broader situation in Venezuela or the actions of other states. There is no assessment of responsibility, legality, or consequence. Instead, the tone remains procedural and factual. This neutrality reflects a common approach in early-stage responses, where maintaining clarity and avoiding escalation are prioritised over interpretation or judgment. In doing so, the Prime Minister's remarks also serve a secondary function. They limit speculation. By clearly stating what the government is doing, rather than what it may do, the focus remains on verifiable actions. This can be particularly important in a media environment where uncertainty often fuels conjecture. The emphasis on active consular engagement provides a stabilising narrative at a time when many details remain unresolved. Overall, this part of the statement presents the government as attentive, operational, and focused on immediate responsibilities. It neither downplays the situation nor amplifies it. Instead, it situates the government's role within established consular practice, emphasising readiness, coordination, and responsibility without extending into areas where information remains incomplete. Viewed within the wider context of the Prime Minister's remarks, this focus on British nationals also plays an important role in shaping the overall response to the situation. While earlier comments addressed uncertainty, consultation, and process, this section brings the narrative back to direct governmental action. It demonstrates how, in moments of international tension, practical responsibilities often take precedence over political positioning. Consular responses are typically among the first operational measures activated during overseas crises. These responses are designed to function regardless of political developments, ensuring continuity of support even as diplomatic assessments evolve. By referencing ongoing work with the embassy, the Prime Minister signalled that such mechanisms are already in motion and that the situation is being addressed through established channels rather than improvised measures. The absence of operational detail in the statement is also noteworthy. While the Prime Minister confirmed engagement and urgency, he did not specify the nature of assistance being provided. This restraint is consistent with standard practice, as public disclosure of specific measures can sometimes create confusion or raise expectations beyond what can be guaranteed. Instead, broad assurances are used to communicate commitment while allowing flexibility in response. This approach also reflects an understanding of audience needs. For the general public, confirmation that the government is aware of its citizens' presence and is actively supporting them is often more important than technical explanations. For families and those directly affected, such statements offer reassurance without overwhelming them with procedural complexity. The language used strikes a balance between transparency and caution. The emphasis on safeguarding is particularly significant. Safeguarding implies not only immediate safety concerns, but also ongoing monitoring of well-being. It encompasses physical security, access to information, and readiness to respond if circumstances deteriorate. By using this term, the Prime Minister conveyed a broader sense of responsibility that extends beyond short-term risk assessment. In political terms, this focus on citizen welfare can also serve to stabilise domestic discourse. When international events provoke sharp reactions or calls for decisive statements, governments sometimes redirect attention toward areas of consensus. Protecting citizens abroad is one such area, rarely contested across political lines. By centering this responsibility, the Prime Minister's remarks reduce the scope for polarisation at an early stage. This part of the statement also reinforces continuity in governance. Regardless of changes in leadership or policy emphasis, consular duties remain a constant function of the state. The Prime Minister's remarks align with long-standing practices that transcend individual administrations. This continuity can be reassuring at times when external events appear unpredictable. Taken together, these comments present a controlled and methodical response. They suggest that while the broader situation continues to be assessed, immediate responsibilities are being addressed through established systems. There is no implication of urgency beyond what has been stated, nor any suggestion of imminent change in posture. Instead, the focus remains on monitoring, coordination, and preparedness. In summary, this two-part emphasis on British nationals underscores a restrained and procedural approach. It avoids speculation, maintains neutrality, and prioritises concrete responsibilities. As the situation develops, this foundation allows for adjustments without contradicting earlier statements, preserving credibility while ensuring that citizen welfare remains central to the government's response.